Senator No.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ministers. I just want to follow up the answer by Mr. Blair. You said we have the meeting with in the Far North. Well, I wanted to ask what mental health and treatment facility in the Far North will be in place at the time of the legalization of cannabis. And second one, I would like to follow up the question of home grow. The Aboriginal leaders, police forces, community leaders, municipal leaders, they all say that enforcing the 4 plan at home will be impossible. And this aspect of the law should be scrapped. Could you please provide us some analysis in your committee from your department to include home growers, in particular in the indigenous community? And what your answer is to rely on the common sense from the parents, I don't think that's not enough. So those are my 2 questions.
Yes, sir. If I may, with respect to what in the Far North, I think it's important to acknowledge we're not introducing a new drug into the Far North. Cannabis is a reality in the Far North. And I will tell you, when I've met with the health officials in northern communities, they've made it very clear that the rate of cannabis use among their young people is much higher than the average across the country. It's a problem today. And addictions in those communities is a problem today. And they need to make investments, and they need help with the problem they're having today. What they've acknowledged is you cannot regulate a prohibited substance, but by lifting the prohibition, it gives us the opportunity to bring in very comprehensive regulations to control its production, to ensure that what is being consumed is safer and healthier, of known potency, of known purity, and of known provenance. It also enables us to put in place a system of regulated distribution, which will be more effective in keeping it out of the hands of the vulnerable populations like our kids. Right now, those decisions are being made by bootleggers and criminals, and frankly, they're not doing anything but maximizing their profit. And finally, in a regulated environment where you can regulate its production, distribution, and consumption, then steps can be put in place to generate revenue that can be reinvested in treatment and rehabilitation. And frankly, it's far easier, in my opinion, for a teacher, a doctor, and a parent to have a conversation with a child about the health and social risks of cannabis use in a strictly and comprehensively regulated environment rather than in a prohibited environment where all we can say is this is against the law. It will still be against the law, but in a regulated environment, it's possible to begin to address the very significant social and health harms that exist today in those communities. And if I may, sir, with respect to 4 plants, I want to be very clear. Our legislation creates a criminal offense for more than 4 plants. And we enable provinces and municipalities to put regulation in place to enable that, to ensure that that is done in a healthful, safe, and socially responsible way. And frankly, from a law enforcement perspective, and I spent nearly 4 decades in law enforcement, the great challenge that we have faced is the illegal grow, the commercial grow of cannabis in single residences, where we see several hundred plants grown and the house given over to that commercial production and rendered uninhabitable. It's unsafe for the house, it's unsafe for the community in which it takes place. And that has been a huge challenge for law enforcement. 4 plants for personal cultivation is not the same problem as 400 plants for commercial cultivation. And so the challenge for law enforcement in enforcing a 4-plant maximum is no different than enforcing a 0-plant maximum. They don't have the ability to get into the house to make sure there isn't 1 plant or 5 plants. And so those challenges are things that we are working with law enforcement and providing them with the tools necessary. But the real problem, social problem that arises from cultivation is the commercial cultivation. And under the strict regulatory regime we've put in place, that commercial cultivation remains a serious criminal offense. But personal cultivation, not for sale, but for personal use, we believe properly regulated by the local authority can be done in a healthful and socially responsible way.